Hello and welcome to another episode of the LEI'D Back Life podcast, where we are talking about loving entrepreneurship and improving daily. If you are here to see me interview awesome people like last week when I got the chance to chat with Dan Snurbush about how to automate a great life. That being said, I do think this will be a great episode because we're talking about how to make 2025 your best year yet. When you are watching this, you'll have about a week before 2025 kicks off, and then ultimately, I hope, a long time after that to continue to have a life and enjoy a great life. So I wanted to take really everything I talk about in my newsletter. I'm working on a new book called Love Your Life, and really condense all this into 1 hour or less of if I was starting from scratch, this is what I would do. So here we are talking about how to make 2025 the best year yet. The biggest thing for me is you need to figure out what best actually means. If best is most profitable, great. If best is fewest hours working, great. If best is most time spent with your kids, great. If best is the year of you and losing 50 pounds, great. If it's all those things, great. But come up with that. And so in the book that I'm writing, I talk about doing this from a very foundational spot. In essence, I have the reader go through creating their core values, ultimately culminating in writing your obituary. I actually wrote mine. It was a pretty cool experience. If you want a copy, drop me a note. I'll send it. It was in a newsletter that I sent. But barring the fact that you want to spend a ton of time doing the core values and writing your obituary, I really have it boiled down to 3 questions, right? How much money do I need to make? What work do I want to be doing? And when do I want to be working? And I'm fine if how much work I want to be doing is 0. That just calls for different questions or different answers. But by having those 3 questions, that will help you focus in what best means. Because ultimately, unless you're listening to this while you are independently wealthy, all of us have jobs and have to have some sort of opportunity for that to lead to our life. And so I think that you can focus on the work that you want to be doing as best as possible. It's not going to be 100%, but that will make working enjoyable while you make money, while you save for retirement, while you go through all of those things. One of my favorite stories comes from a conversation between Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller. Kurt Vonnegut wrote Breakfast of Champions, Catch-22, or sorry, not Catch-22. Joseph Heller wrote Catch-22. So you've got 2 authors talking at this dinner party for some sort of huge investor of whatever, hedge fund manager or something. And Vonnegut says to Heller, hey, what do you think knowing that this guy makes more money in an hour or a day than you and I will make in our entire lifetimes writing these books, selling these books, whatever? And Heller says, yeah, that's all well and good, except we know something he doesn't. And Vonnegut says, what's that? And Heller says, enough. What enough is, right? So there comes a point where we get stuck in this loop of capitalism, looking for more, always wanting more, and not knowing what enough is. And so that's why, my question is, how much money do you need to make? Know the minimum number. And that is living off of it, being okay. And I focus on okay with, whatever else you have, and then ultimately being able to retire, because what you need to make is not just covering your bills. It's enough to cover, mental health and the important and the, most important things, and then ultimately retirement. And then what work you want to be doing should allow you to achieve those numbers in a way that is pretty good. And look, like I said, it's not 100% for everybody. Even for me, there are things that I do that I don't want to do. And ultimately, I think we all should do some things that we don't want to do from the standpoint of building that willpower, building that character, building that grit. However, a lot of us as business owners agree to just take on more and more and more. And then one day you look up and you hate your job, not because you hate your profession, not because you hate being a business owner, but because you hate the job that you took. And so let's focus on the job that we want. From a law firm standpoint, I am offering you the opportunity to be a business owner, be the CEO, be a marketer, generate cases, be the sales process and do the consultations, be a lawyer and do the legal work. And I'll let you get a small, 2 of those, maybe 3 of those if you're really kind of part-time with them. But understand, all of those are full-time 40-hour-a-week jobs. So if you want to work 40 hours a week, you're not going to be able to do those things full-time. And so for me, I work 3 hours. I work 3 days a week, about 25 hours a week. So I have to figure out how to do all of those jobs in a short time frame. And so for me, like, I am a business owner and I am a marketer, and that's really it. I do none of the consultations for my law firm. I do very few of them for my coaching company. I do none of the legal work. I do some the coaching for my coaching company, but like ultimately my job for the most part is looking at KPIs, building these things up, training employees, going over all that stuff, doing the same for my clients that I coach or consult with, and then ultimately generating leads for my law firm or for my coaching company through newsletters, podcasts like this, that kind of stuff. So really figure out what jobs you want and then figure out when you want to be working. Here's the beauty of this. You have created a business. You are a business owner. You get to choose when you work, or at least have some control over it. The problem is most of us do that from the standpoint of working forever, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Instead, I want you to put specific constraints on your day. If you want to work normal 9 to 5, that's totally fine. If you have small kids and you want to work, 9 to 2 when they get out of school and then come back at 8 after they're asleep and work a couple more hours, that's fine. If you want to be like me and not work 2 days a week, that's fine. Just really figure out when you want to be working. If it's time of day, if it's total number of hours, whatever it is, and really figure it out. We're going to dive into some of this later, but I want to touch on the fact that we are knowledge workers, right? Like, I am not selling people my physical effort. I am selling them my mental effort, both the law firm and the coaching company. A lot of the studies for knowledge work really cap us out at about 6 hours a day. So 6 hours a day times 5 days a week would be 30 hours. That's probably a more realistic goal for us than 50 or 60 hours. Now, mind you, you're going to have administrative stuff on there, answering emails, driving to and from work. That might still creep into 40 or more hours, but just understand that statistically speaking, your brain begins to burn out after 6 hours of knowledge work. So as a lawyer, we are a knowledge worker. As a coach, I'm a knowledge worker. And I can tell you, that's why I like taking a long, a 2-hour lunch. So basically I'll work 9 to 12. I'll do a 2-hour networking lunch. I'll come back from 2 to 5. And so then ultimately I have worked, quote unquote, for about 6 hours. And those seem to be the weeks that I feel the best, that I come home in the best mood, that I feel like I was on top of it, as opposed to the days where I, not skip lunch, but don't do a networking lunch, do a quicker lunch and tear through. Those are the days that drain me a lot more, which seems to be supported by a lot of the research. So when we have these questions in mind, it would be great if we could just create from there, but really we can't. I am talking to you about this conversation starting from scratch, but our lives do not start from scratch. Hopefully, thankfully. So when it comes to making 2025 your best year yet, you did a bunch of stuff in 2024. So we need to figure out what you did right and what you did wrong. The easiest thing from there is we're going to double down on what's right and we're going to minimize what's wrong, but we don't necessarily know what that is in the moment, right? So one of the things that I push all of my clients to do, and we do it multiple times, is a time audit. In essence, it's an Excel spreadsheet where we track their time for 2 weeks. We include if it gave you energy or sucked you energy afterwards. We include how easy it would be to give this to somebody or something else. That could be hiring, delegating, outsourcing, automating, systematizing, or just stopping, and no longer doing it. I'm open with, really any of those things. But by doing this time audit, you will see what is the lowest hanging fruit, right? Because if I want you to put in extra time planning and creating a calendar and following it and being introspective about the results, I need to get stuff off your plate. There is only 24 hours in the day for all of us, despite the fact that we can do different things in those 24 hours. So I would start with a time audit. I would look at the things that suck your energy. I would look at the things that are easy to delegate, and I would figure what are those things you can pass along. At the beginning, you're probably going to keep things that either you can't afford to delegate, or you are the current best fit for, or you are things you genuinely enjoy, things that give you energy, that kind of stuff. By the end of this, I want you to be only doing those things. I want you to only be doing the things that you can't afford to outsource and are the best person for, and love and give you energy, and are your zone of genius, and help you get your passion. We're not there yet. So for now, I want you to get the low-hanging fruit. If there's stuff that you are not the best at and it's cheap for you to delegate it and you hate doing it, great, gone. Like, let's just get it out of your life right now. And so I want to look at that from the standpoint of legal work, right? That's the biggest one for my clients. Most people that are hiring me to help them are trying to get out of doing the legal work and into one of those other jobs, the CEO role, the marketing role, just the sales process, out of the legal work. So what does that require? It requires you to audit your time and figure out what of your legal work actually has to be done by a lawyer. There are a ton of firms I talk to that the owner is doing too much legal work, but when they look at it, none of it actually requires a lawyer. Yes. And so from that standpoint, you could hire a paralegal and have them do it full time and get a full caseload of non-lawyer work, but legal work off of your plate. If some of it requires a lawyer, then you probably have to hire a lawyer or co-counsel, partnership of counsel, whatever it is from there. But really figure out what is required from this. And look, here's the thing. All of us as lawyers, we only have our word, our reputation, our reviews online, right? We don't have a patent or a trademark on specific arguments or case law or whatnot. So I'm not telling you to just give the legal work to somebody else to do it 80% as well as you. I'm telling you at the beginning, if they can do it 80% as well as you, in theory, you could take 5 hours of their work, 1 hour of your work, and get it to where it needs to be. But then ultimately, you want to be hiring people who are going to eventually do the work better than you ever could. My intake person does RPI consults better than I ever could because she has patience, or more patience than me, because she has a better emotional quotient with our clients, because she genuinely cares about them more, because she's a better listener, because a million other things, in addition to her getting all the reps, in addition to that being her focus, in addition to so many other things. So you're not delegating this down for it to happen worse. You are playing a role to get it happening as good, and then ultimately, hopefully empowering that person to do it better than you. And look, I get it. Tomorrow, hiring a lawyer for $100,000, $200,000, whatever it costs in your area for your practice, geographic area, practice area, whatever, not something that you can probably do overnight. That being said, there are super cheap ways for us to get back some of our time. Internal to the office, a paralegal is going to be cheaper than a lawyer. A legal assistant is going to be cheaper than that. A VA is going to be cheaper than that. When it comes to household chores, you can hire somebody to do probably all of your household chores. So my wife and I are huge fans of Fair Play. The book by Eve Rodsky talks about how we've done a really good job of trying to push equality for women in the workplace. We have a long way to go, I know, but she goes through like how much better that is. However, we have not done the same from the home standpoint. And so we expect women to be 50-50 in the workplace, but then still, 80-20, 75-25 at the home. So Fair Play talks about how to overcome that. And you actually get, I wish I had them with me, these cards. They're like big flashcards with different chores on them. And so I will tell you, when my wife and I sat down to do this first, she probably had 60-ish%, maybe slightly higher than 60% of the cards. And I had slightly below 40%, which was not great, but wasn't terrible. Immediately what I did is I grabbed every single card that I could pay for somebody else to solve. So I grabbed, well, I guess I had landscaping, but I hired a landscaper. She had health insurance. I grabbed that one. I network with a bunch of health insurance people. Same for auto insurance, same for whatever else. You can find somebody to do basically every household chore. You can send your laundry out. They will pick it up from your house and fold it and bring it back. You can hire somebody to clean. You can hire a landscaper. You can go through all those things. I'm not telling you to do that for every single thing by any means, but to the extent that you can afford it, to the extent that you don't want to do it, to the extent that somebody will do it better than you, these tend to be the low-hanging fruit. So for example, When clients pay me $500 or $750 an hour, I don't need to spend 2 hours mowing my lawn when my landscaper can do it in 25 minutes for $150 a month. Easy. However, for the chores, if there are chores that you do like, I am more okay with you keeping them. For example, food. That's the biggest one, right? Food is something that most of us do 3 times a day. And we have the options from, like, we could grow our own food, we can process our own food, we can cook our own food, we can buy our own food, we can cook our own food, we can prepare our own food, we can throw it away, we can pay somebody else to send us pre-made food to put together. We can hire somebody else to send us pre-made meals that we just microwave. We can go to a restaurant and have somebody else take care of all of it. We have the entire gamut, the full spectrum for food. So I want you to use that as the example, right? Like I love food. In so many ways, I love food, but really, like, this is the best one for you to think through the process. And I wrote a whole newsletter about this. You want a copy? Let me know. I'll give you a copy. But basically, like, you need to figure out what of this part of food you want to do. Like, what is your initial outcome from it? And then, like, what's going to happen? So I'm fine, for $500, $750 an hour, whatever the hourly rate is. In theory, I could go out to eat every meal. I could eat out all the time. I would not have to worry about having a refrigerator. I would not have to worry about going food shopping, cooking, prepping stuff, whatever. That's not realistic for me because I would be 500 pounds and dead. So from a health standpoint, I need to figure out a way around that. And I guess I could, in theory, then figure out what are healthy options and force myself to only buy healthy places and whatever else. But I also enjoy cooking. I like trying new things. I like trying new recipes. I like trying all that. So I cook quite a bit. Again, I enjoy it. It's easier for me to eat healthy. I can't tell you the last time I made a meal that I didn't like, as opposed to going out to eat. All sorts of issues come up. And so I don't go out. I don't cook all the time. I don't go out to eat all the time. It's a mix. But like, really take this process of food and apply it to everything else in your life. You can do this full spectrum of all the legal work to none of the legal work. You can do this full spectrum of every household chore to none of them. You can do this thing, food, from growing your own stuff to being served at a restaurant. Like, figure out where it makes sense for you to take care of these things and where it doesn't. Because ultimately, for any of these things, you can hire somebody else to do it. You can delegate it to somebody who already works for you. You can outsource it to another company. You can automate it with a computer. You can systematize it so it runs more efficiently, or you can just stop doing it. You can't stop eating, but you can stop eating out. You can stop cooking. Like, you can figure out what's going to be the thing that makes the most amount of change, that is the most helpful for you. And so the way that I look at it is, I'm a big fan of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. So ultimately, if you're going to put one thing on your plate for an hour, I want you to take 4 hours or even really 5 hours off of your plate so we can maintain that 80-20. Because the beauty of it is, look, as introspective as I am, as long as I've done this before, 80% of my good outcomes come from 20% of my best inputs. So I'm still going through these things. I'm still figuring out what is the best use of my time. I have found that to be me being on the podcast. I have found that to be me writing my newsletters. I found that to be me doing my own coaching. I have found that to be me running meetings at my law firm and doing my employee evals. And anytime that changes, I can give it to somebody else. I can hire somebody else. I can train somebody else. There are certain things that didn't do anything for me or others we just stopped doing. But really going through that process will help you see how you can get things off of your plate. And so again, 80-20 rule. If you're taking on an extra hour, I want you to take at least 4 hours off of your plate. What are you going to do with those hours? We'll talk about that in a second, but ultimately, I don't care. Like, if it is you sitting on the couch watching Netflix, but your business is running well, but your spouse or significant other or family are happy with you, you're happy with yourself, your health is okay, great. There is nothing wrong with leisure. We get caught up in this crazy concept of grind, and hustle porn and whatnot. But then if you read any memoir from anybody, like Phil Knight, who talks about at the end of Shoe Dog how he wishes he spent more time with his kids, especially when one of his sons unfortunately passed away in a scuba diving accident relatively young. You read Walter Isaacson's book on Elon Musk, and he talks about how people, Musk said, if people knew really what I went through, people wouldn't want to be me. You read Walter Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs, and he talks about regretting how he treated his daughter when he was young and how he didn't see his family, and like all these things. We go back to the same stuff. Like, there was I wish I remembered who it was. There was a hospice nurse who talked about how often men tell her they wish they didn't work as much, right? Like we get into this grind mentality, but then when we're sitting there on our deathbed, when that day comes for us, and hopefully it's way in the future, the number one regret, especially among men, is I wish I hadn't spent as much time as work. So if you take an hour off of your plate, if you put an hour on your plate and take 4 hours off your plate, and it's something that is supposed to be helpful for you, if it is rest, if it is leisure, if it is time with family, if it's picking up a hobby, great. I support you. It is totally okay. We get caught up in this mentality that like it would be bad and selfish of us if we put ourselves first. So instead we don't. And then we are not around or not in the right mindset or not in the right physical state to be there for others, right? Like if you are burned out, you are not helping your clients. You are not helping your employees. You are not helping your family. So if it means you taking an hour to go get a massage every so often and hiring a VA for 10, 12 bucks, $6 an hour, I don't, whatever it is, if that's going to be the thing that helps you show up the right way, that's going to be worth its weight in gold, because you are going to show up better for your clients. You're going to show up better for your employees. You're going to show up better for your kids, for your spouse, for your family, for your friends, for your significant others. That's going to be more impactful in the long run. And then you always taking on more and grinding yourself down into dust. All right. So I want to change gears into how we do that. But before that, I want to talk about our newsletter. So the newsletter come out this Friday, 12/27. 365 things to do to grow your firm. So everybody who I talk to says they want more cases. Great. Here's 365 ways to do it. We send this out every year. I think it was 250 last year. So now we're going for one per year instead of one a week for most weeks, and AI. So there's going to be a lot more in there about using AI, using ChatGPT and whatnot to grow your business. All right. So coming back, we know that we want to use our time more effectively. We know that we want to have 2025 be our best year ever. So how do we do it? Step one, you need to build better habits. We need to build better habits. There's a quote that everybody says is Aristotle, but really it was William Durant that says, in essence, we are what we do. Excellence then is not a habit. Sorry, I'm butchering the quote. Anyway, we are what we repeatedly do. Like that's from Aristotle. He talks about, to be a great argumenter, you argue. To be a great guitar player, you play guitar. To be a great lawyer, you lawyer. So how can we habitually do these things over and over again that turn us into the person that we want to be? If we want to be the kind of person who is healthy, we eat healthier, we work out consistently, we go for runs, we get our steps, whatever it is. That's how we become what we want to be. So building better habits, we are what we repeatedly do. So food, I use that example above from the standpoint of how it can actually happen. From the standpoint of building better habits, what are the habits around food that you need? And look, this is for me. I, if left to my own devices, will eat nothing but garbage. And I'm not even a huge fan of desserts, so that's not my problem. But like, I would eat cheese fries and pizza and chicken wings and ribs for every freaking meal and be so happy until I had a coronary and died in a short period of time, right? So I need to figure out what habits help me with food. And so the beauty of habits are we are not always making things easier. Sometimes we use habits to make things harder. So for me and for my child, we have a snack bag. So rather than having snacks out, we have snacks in a bag that you cannot see through up on the top shelf in the pantry. And so look, I'm not locking my pantry. I probably could. And some nights I think I should, but I'm not. So to get a snack, it's right there. However, sitting on the counter where you can see it at eye level is an apple, a banana, an orange, stuff like that. So I have tried to make the healthy stuff easier by putting it easily grabbed, by having it seen, make the not so good stuff harder by putting it in a bag, putting it at the top of the pantry, putting it over to the side, that kind of stuff. So think about that for habits. There are certain things that we want to do to make things easier. There are certain things we want to do to make things harder. So Something that I love along those lines is habit stacking. You take a habit that you already have, and when you want to add things to it, you add more to it. So thank God I do a pretty good job of brushing my teeth 2 days, 2 days, 2 times a day. Good God. So when it came time for me having issues with my teeth and having to floss more and having to water pick and whatnot, I stacked it on top of brushing my teeth. So when I brush my teeth, I floss, and I created a whole Alexa routine to help me do this, but I use that as habit stacking. When I wanted to stretch more, because I've had the weirdest sorts of injuries. I messed up my knee at a disc golf lesson. I split my toe in half hanging out and drinking at a pool. So like I've been more interested lately in preventative maintenance of my body. I'm really good about doing my ab workouts 3 times a week. If I don't, my back ends up bothering me. So I took my ab workout, I tacked on a series of stretches to it. Obviously, it's not going to help my toe, but for the knee and for other stuff, like it's in there. So I habit stack that on top. So what are the things you're already consistently doing? What other things make sense to be done with them? Flossing makes sense to be done when I'm already brushing my teeth. Stretching out my knee and my hamstrings and my thighs, or not stretching out my knee, but stretching out my leg, my hamstrings and my thighs make sense when I'm already working out, because I'm going to go shower afterwards anyway. So it's okay if I'm that much more, sweaty or whatnot from it. It's going to resolve itself. And it's easy because now those things are tied. I took something I already do, I stuck another habit on top of it, and I can keep doing that moving forward. Other things that are helpful, where you put things. So make it easy. If you can never find your keys, maybe not when you walk in the door, but when you first walk in the door in a position that can't be easily seen from outside your house, hang the keys there. That way it's right there. You will remember them on the way out. You'll remember them on the way in. They're right back in the same place. And now you're saving yourself a bunch of time finding your keys. If you find yourself, shopping online at 2:00 in the morning, lock it from your phone. Make it harder for you to open up Amazon after a certain time to order things. Like really think about this for anything in your life that you want to change. James Clear says every system is perfectly designed to get the outcome that it currently gets. If you are happy with that part of your life, I wouldn't worry about it. Like that's the thing that I want to be very clear of. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. As much as I hate the use of the word ain't, I like that expression. So if you are sitting here with things that are not a problem, don't change them. Focus on the problems and then, solve them. And then you'll find out other things become the next problem, right? So anything that you want to make easier or harder, figure out how to do that. If it's hanging your keys, if it's locking your phone, if it's putting the snacks up, if it's putting the good stuff in front of you, these are little things that I promise you will go a long way. If you're looking for a great book on this, Mindless Eating is wild to me, because it like literally there is a thing that if you give people a larger bag of popcorn, even if the popcorn has been stale for 5 to 7 days, they will eat more of it because it's a larger bag. If you put your food on a smaller plate, you will eat less of it. If you are eating with more people, you will eat more of it. It is amazing to me, like all these studies that they've done around food science, but you can apply that to everything. There's another book called Nudge that talks about like having people opt in or opt out from being a organ donor. Completely changes what people do it. There's a whole thing that says, you have people opt in or opt out of retirement, and you can have the retirement scale up as they get promotions, a percentage versus a fixed amount, and like all these things that you can do that are little small things that end up having drastic changes, drastic differences in outcomes, because little things stack on top of themselves. So it's finding these easy to sacrifice things. I talked about the food that I like. So going down to eating that food once a week, or eating that food twice a week instead of 3 times a week, and then once you get there, eating it once a week. And then once you get there, eating it every other week, making small changes until they become the norm really become helpful for building better habits. The other things I want to highlight, the habits that we consistently put last that we shouldn't, the number one answer, sleep. I am of the belief, how crazy it is when we sit here and we're like, oh, doctors used to bloodlet people and give them leeches for so long, and we think that that's crazy. So I think sleep is that thing now. I think we're going to find out that we already know this to some extent. I think we're going to confirm this over time, that like our disinterest in sleep is one of the worst things that we could possibly do. So there's a book called Why We Sleep. I think it's a great book because it's the most terrifying book I ever read. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, but ultimately, like in the book, he talks about giving yourself, 9 hours of sleep opportunity. Not that you will sleep for 9 hours, but on average, that lets you sleep for about 8 hours, which is on average what people need to be properly rested and whatnot. So I think that's a great place to start. He goes into, the sleeping habits, having a dark room, having it cool, white noise machine or not, against like melatonin and some of the other, sleep aids, that kind of stuff. So I think that's a great place to start. If you are constantly irritable, agitated, tired, I would start there. Exercise and health. We talked about food. We recommend an hour of a day in America from, I don't know, it's not the FDA, whoever it is, probably a good place to start. I get 10,000 steps every single day. How do I do that? I go for a walk in the morning. That gets me pretty close. I also lift weights 3 times a week. I also play pickleball and disc golf a ton. And I want to make sure, like, yes, sometimes that sounds crazy, but I'm going to get to this in a second, because while we can't multitask, it is terrible. We can have multi impacts. So really thinking about exercise and health, probably carving out an hour a day for your exercise or your health in some other manner. The next one being hobbies and interests. We kind of refuse to have them. I am not talking about side hustles. I'm talking about like genuine hobbies. I don't play disc golf so that I can get really good. I play disc golf because I genuinely enjoy it, and it's good for my health, and I can do it with people that I like hanging out with. So I can kill, 3 birds with 1 stone. I can get steps. I can have fun. I can see people, which leads into the time with loved ones. So like thinking about, doing these hobbies or interests with people you care about, with referral sources to help your business, with your kids so you can spend more time with them, with friends that you haven't seen so you can maintain relationships with people instead of just having, 5,000 friends on Facebook that you never see. Like really think about how to incorporate some of these things together as you're building these habits. So what does that look like? That might look like, I go to bed at 9 o'clock. Like I am pretty adamant about this. I'm going to hit it. I want to say at least 6 days a week, certainly at least 5 days a week. Like I am in bed before 9, trying to be out at 9. That has me set an alarm for 6 o'clock, which would be 9 hours. I am usually up at 5:15 to 5:30 naturally without the alarm clock, which is great because it's my body determining like I am ready to get up. Then I go right into an hour of physical activity, again, at least 5 days a week, if not 6, if not all 7. I'm going for a walk. I'm going for a ruck. I'm going for a run or jog. I'm going to play disc golf. I'm going to lift weights. And then I know that, by 7 o'clock, I'm waking my son up. I'm doing the early morning stuff with him, taking him to school, going off to work, those kind of things. So ultimately, like that day of what do you need to do in a day breaks out, for the most part, if you have 9 hours of sleep opportunity, if you have 1 hour of physical work, if you work for the normal 8 hours, that leaves you with 6 flexible hours every single day. Then because of hopefully you're not working weekends, that gives you 46 free weekly hours. So that's about 200 free monthly hours. And that's where you can fill in like the other things that you want to do, spending more time with family and friends, picking up a hobby, those kind of things. Like we have the time if we choose to make it. Additionally, I think you should probably be looking at working closer to 6 hours a week, which then gives 6 hours a day, which then gives you closer to 8 flexible hours per week. And it would be really great if we could plan this way, right? Like if I could send you your calendar right now, carve out 9 hours for sleep opportunity, carve out 1 hour for work, and then or for exercise, hours for work, and then have the open time, that would be great. I would love it. If you can do that right now, stop this recording right now, pause it, go over your calendar, put in recurring tasks every day for these things, and then you'll go back and be more specific about it. That's usually not the way that works. So then what we have to do instead is we have to talk about planning more. So this is where, in the book that I'm writing, I talk about taking those core values, that obituary, designing that, BHAG that Jim Collins talks about, that big, hairy, audacious goal or goals, and then like working backwards. If I hope to live to 100, that would give me 65 more years. What am I? I'm 36, 64 more years. So like if I died at 100, I want to accomplish these things. I have 60 something years to go. Like, let's break it down into what does the next, 10 years look like? What does the next 3 to 5 years look like? What does the next 1 year look like? What does the next quarter look like? And that's probably about the point that we can like legitimately plan for a lot of these things. I think it would be interesting. I'd love to see everybody who made a 5-year plan in 2016 into a year of COVID in 2021, 5 years later, how close their plan was. But obviously, I think the businesses that did the best were able to take like a quarter two of 2020 plan and address it for the current situation of a global pandemic. That became really helpful. So I would say, having those big, hairy goals, breaking it down into big picture, 10 years out, 3 to 5 years out, this year out, but then really diving into it in quarters becomes what's helpful. And so that's why I think like if you have 200 monthly flexible hours, multiply that by 3 for a quarter, that's 600 flexible hours. And look, I'm not telling you to figure out 600 hours of stuff to do. I'm telling you to say like, okay, well, if I figure I can take 10% of that, I have 60 hours every 3 months to put towards this. So if you want to learn a new instrument, like figuring out, if you met with somebody for an hour a week for 12 weeks, that would leave you with 48 hours. So you could set up practice time for, 4 more weeks, 4 more hours a week, something like that. Like it gives you a reasonable belief of what you can do. This is what I do for myself, except from a business standpoint. So like anytime I have an idea, I stop what I'm doing and I email it to myself. My assistant then takes that idea and puts it into the right block. So we have, business ideas. I've got creative ideas. I've got, someday maybe list of like places I want to go, things I want to see. We have all those in there. And then we know like, okay, you have nothing planned for Christmas vacation. Like, where do we want to go? What do we want to see? Okay, you have 20 hours of work open for next month. Like, could we get this new course in here? Could we design a group coaching program in that time frame? Where can those things fit? And sometimes things end up taking multiple months, which at that point, like we might plan that for a quarter. And now we know like we're going to take 5 hours a month for this thing for 3 months. That's 15 hours, fill in some extra time. Like we work that way through it. But seriously, whatever you do, no matter what you do, put all of this onto your calendar. Put it onto your calendar, put it onto your calendar. I can tell you right now, for example, no, I'm not going to pull it up. I can tell you right now, I will get asked to do speaking engagements like 8 to 14 months out. It's really hard to say no to something 8 or 14 months out. However, because I have all of my meetings recurring on my calendar at the time that it takes every week ad infinitum, and all of my coaching and all of my exercise and all of my lunches and all of my, whatever, all the way out, I can look at my calendar and genuinely be like, I can't do that. I am sorry. I cannot speak to your group in October of 2025 because I know I already have stuff that day, or I know that's a coaching week. I'm going to be busy with other things, And so I've had people say, okay, thank you. I've had people be able to move it, and this wasn't a situation where like it was some giant conference. They didn't move 100 people to accommodate me. It was a situation where, I don't know, they meet every week and they just swapped what weeks they had a guest speaker, something like that. But it was great to be able to say that with enough advance notice for everybody to be able to accommodate it. So have this stuff in your calendar, because here's the thing. Once you have this vision and you have this plan and it's on your calendar, it really boils down to there's only one of 3 issues, right? You're going to have to overcome obstacles. So the issues then at that point are you're either not following your calendar, or what's on your calendar is not working, or number 3, which I'm going to hold for a second, right? If you are not following your calendar, it's a question of why, right? Like if it's on your calendar and you're just not doing it, why? Most likely it's because of distractions. The biggest distractions being your cell phone. I have access to all of recorded human history, or the vast majority of it, here on my phone. So sometimes it's really hard to do what I'm supposed to do because there's something more interesting on there, whether it's a video, whether it's a text. I think I've gotten about 6 text messages during this thing. Thankfully, I love talking about this, so it's not a big deal to not check my phone. But for some people, it would be, right? Social media, right? Social media is the most wildly crazy tool that we have access to, because I have used social media to generate literally millions of dollars. I've also wasted, I hope not millions of hours, thousands of hours on it, right? So that's an easy one. So really try and figure out where those distractions are. And here's the thing. I also get distracted by my child, by my wife, by people I really care about. And in those cases, it's fine. Like, there are certain distractions that are totally okay. And if I have a terrible week because my kid was sick, I am so fine with that. If I have a terrible week because I didn't have the willpower to avoid Facebook for too much and I didn't get to do these things, that's going to be more of a problem. And it should be, right? Like, in that situation, it's a lot more me than it was the situation. All right. So I talked about my idea for my monthly meeting. So I send all the ideas to myself. So when I have those distractions, like, I can focus on what it is. Sometimes I will write hand notes. Sometimes I will just say, hey, Siri, remind me of blah, blah, blah when I get to whatever. And I know I can come back to it when that happens, to get it to the monthly meeting, to then book time for it if I'm going to, those kind of things. Solutions here, an accountability buddy becomes great. If you are the kind of person that doesn't do what you say you're going to do because you can't hold yourself accountable, find somebody else who can hold you accountable. It can be an accountability buddy. It could be a coach. You can pay a lot of money to me or other people to make sure you do the stuff that you say you're going to do. I'm fine with it if you're fine with it. But if you are trying to work out more and you find somebody else who's going to meet you at the gym, it is that much harder for you to not show up, because you are accountable to them. They are expecting you, you are expecting them. And the beauty of it, accountability buddy is sometimes better than accountability group, because if 4 of us are going to meet at the gym, it's a lot easier for me to not show up and have there be 3 people. If only 2 of us are showing up and I don't show up, you are on your own. So I feel like a jerk. So remember, accountability buddy or coach. Ultimately, here's the thing. You want to become the type of person who does the things they say they are going to do. I don't know anybody who's like, man, I really wish that I wasn't somebody who followed my word. We don't always do it. I flake. I flake a lot less now than I used to. I hate flaking. I would rather say no and change my mind to yes than say yes, I'll be there, and say no. Why? Because I hate when people flake on me, right? So it's the same thing. It's better to say no than it is to say yes and then flake. That being said, we are all a work in progress here, but like, the more that you become the type of person who does the things they say they will do, the easier it is for you to just throw something on your calendar, consider the fact that you said you were going to do it, and do it. Like, when you are that type of person, you can accomplish anything as long as it makes its way onto your calendar. As long as you physically have the time to do it, you can do it. That is all that you need. That being said, it takes reps. It takes repeatability. It takes the fact that, like, I have all this stuff on my calendar and I can tell you I follow it more than 90% of the time, which lets me know that I am the person, or becoming the person, or will be the type of person who does what they say they're going to do. And so I wanted to stretch more. I added it to my calendar. I want to, make sure I look over my son's homework. I added it to my calendar. Like, the more that you have those things, it's one place that I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And if I don't follow it every now and then, it's fine, but I know that I consistently follow it, right? If you have it listed out and you don't do what you're supposed to do once, it's a mistake. If you don't do what you're supposed to do twice, it's the beginning of a habit you don't want to have, right? So that was number 1. Number 2, you are doing what's on your calendar, but it's not working, right? So you have all this workout stuff on your calendar and eating habits, but you're not losing weight. You have all this specific delegation stuff, but you still find yourself dealing with the same problems. Like, you have this stuff on your calendar, but it's not working. From there, there's only 2 options. Option 1, you know what changes you need to make. Option 2, you don't. So either it's not working and you know why, or it's not working and you don't know why. And I know that's incredibly simplistic. I get it. For the sake of simplicity, though, if you know why it's not working, just freaking make the change. Or if you have a really good belief that you know why it's not working, make the change and see what happens. If you don't know, here's where it's worth getting more granular. Here's where it's worth spending the money. Hire an expert. Hire a business coach. Hire a personal trainer. Hire a personal chef. Hire a therapist. Like, if you have this out on your calendar and you are following it and it's not working, bring in expertise. Figure out what you need by using the brain or the experience of somebody who has their experience. For me, I am basically a life coach for other CEOs because I think I figured it out. I help walk them through this program for them. I work with them on what the solutions are there. I hold them accountable, yada, yada, yada. If that's what you need, great. I am here for you. If it's not me, there's other people that will do the same thing. If you are telling me you want to lose 50 pounds, I'm not the person to tell you what to do. If you're telling me you want to eat healthier, I'm not the person to hire professionally for that, but there's somebody who is, right? So figure out either you know why or you don't know why. All right. So next episode is going to be a little bit different. We're going to have a fireside chat with my executive assistant, Olivia, and I. In essence, we're going to go through like stories from 2024, lessons that we've learned from it to ultimately be better moving forward and hopefully give you all some helpful information. That being said, I talked about there's a third reason for your calendar that I want to focus on. I didn't give it to you yet. Here's what it is. You don't feel like it's working. Flat out. So you're not doing what's on there. You're doing what's on there, but it's not working. Or number three, the other biggest obstacle is you're not feeling like it's working. So on the one hand, we have loss aversion as humans. If I offered you a 50-50 coin flip and you would either win $100 or lose $100, you do not want to take that bet because losing $100 sucks more than winning $100. It's somewhere in the 200 to 100, 300 to 100, something along those lines because of loss aversion. What does that mean? It means that we recognize negatives a lot more than we recognize positives. You don't normally get out of the car and say, oh my God, I didn't hit any traffic. You don't normally finish a day and say, wow, everything went right that day. This was wonderful. You don't normally, we normally recognize the bad things. And this is from the news, right? The news doesn't report that vaccination rates are the highest they've ever been. The news reports that somebody got shot. The news reports that some idiot doesn't want to take a vaccine and polio is coming back, right? The news reports on negatives because that's how our brain is hardwired. It's easier to see negatives in the moment. And if you think about it from the standpoint of, ancient human on the wilderness plains, here's a rustle in the bushes. 8 of the group says, oh my God, it's a lion, and flees. One person says, nah, it probably isn't, and stays, and then gets eaten by the lion. They don't pass their genes along. It is hardwired into us. The other one, the hedonic treadmill. So cool experience. Basically, we take whatever is happening to us and we move it to our normal rate. So you have the hedonic treadmill from weight. Your body will naturally figure that your current weight over a long enough time is your right weight, and will try to naturally fluctuate back to it, which is why diets work in the immediacy until the treadmill kicks in, and now you go back to the weight you were unless you get over the hump enough. If you win the lottery, after 6 months, you're back to your normal happiness. If you lose a limb, you're back to your normal happiness. So the hedonic treadmill has its pros and cons, but ultimately here, it's just a situation where you're not happy enough to continue to follow the plan. It's not working fast enough. You're not seeing the results obviously enough, even though they're there, and it's keeping you from continuing to follow this plan. This is why you need that vision, right? This is why you need that overall vision, what I want to be, and you need those numbers of what do I need to make? When do I want to work? How much work? What work do I want to be doing? Because now, we have the numbers. So if you were sitting here I don't want to follow my calendar, I haven't seen success from it, you can say, hey, look, am I closer to my financial number? Am I closer to my hours of work? Am I closer to the work I actually want? You can see your progress. That becomes the easiest way for you to overcome the hedonic treadmill. Because let's be honest, we can all sit here and say we want that one more case, one more lawyer, one more promotion, then I'll be happy. But that's never going to be the case because of the hedonic treadmill. It's going to always get us wanting that one more. As much as I can sit here and tell you there's a bunch of things I want to change for 2025, I can also sit here and tell you that if 2022 me knew where I was going to be right now in 2024, he would be so ecstatically happy. He would be willing to probably kill people to be where I am at now. Thankfully, I haven't killed anybody. So, knock on wood. Because I had these plans, because I honor them, because I followed my vision, and I want the same for you, right? That's a great takeaway. Jordan Ostrop does not want you to have to kill people. So what's going to happen? You're going to honor this plan, and you're going to keep iterating the plan. You're going to keep making changes. And this is kind of a twofold process. Because on the one hand, what got you here won't get you there, right? Like the strategies that got me down 40 pounds are not the strategies that will get me down another 20 pounds. The strategies that got me to a 6-person $1 million firm are not the same strategies that get me to a 15-person $5 million firm. At the same time, though, you have to solve the problem that you actually have until it's no longer a problem, even if it will be a problem again. What I mean by that is, if you need more cases right now, tomorrow, do not launch a podcast that's going to take a bunch of time. Do not, hire a new employee who's not going to help you generate business. Like, focus on the problem. Focus on generating more cases now. Focus on closing more of your leads now. Focus on training somebody to be able to handle more work now until that's not your problem. And then it will come up again. So, for example, for a non-business related example, me not eating French fries multiple times per week helped me lose a bunch of weight, right? So I solved that issue until it wasn't the problem. And then I had to look at what was the next thing. And so maybe it was, 4 days a week of French fries down to 2 days a week of French fries. Then I could go to all right, don't eat, barbecue food every single week, make it every other week. And then by the time that got me down, 40 pounds, then I had to go back and be like, okay, well now, let's cut French fries down to 1. Let's increase from 7,500 steps to 10,000 steps, whatever it is. So solve the problem until it's not the problem, even if it will be the problem again. What got you here won't get you there, but stay focused on what your issue is. And so if these things go well, you're going to have a great 2025. You're going to have a wonderful 2025. However, so I want you to be sitting here next year in 365 days saying, well, okay, that was great. I had a wonderful year. I appreciate the changes I made. And now I want to make 2026 the best year possible, right? So the hedonic treadmill is going to say, let's keep making it better. That iteration is going to say, let's keep changing the plan. I want you to have that feeling. It's easy to have the bad part of that. The harder part is recognizing how much farther you've come and figuring out how successful you have been, appreciating it. Dan Sullivan calls it the gap is easy to see. The gain is harder to see. So if you write down what we talk about here, you can refer back to it to see the gain that you have made. So even if you had a great year, you're sitting here next year, you're seeing the gap. You're seeing what changes you still want to make. You still need to appreciate the stuff you've already done. You need to be the person that celebrates your wins, which motivates you to then continue to do the things you said you're going to do. And that's it in a nutshell, right? All of this is multi-billion-dollar industries. If you follow what's here, it will be correct. The answers will be different for everybody. The strategies will be different, but that's a pretty good framework for you here. If you need more help, please reach out. I am more than happy to help you. Otherwise, we will see you back here next week for Fireside Chat with Olivia, my personal assistant, for the best stories and the best lessons that we've learned from 2024. In the meantime, I hope you love this episode as much as I loved it, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for being here and for your time.